which means it's time for us to go into our newspaper headlines for this morning and discuss them in a bit more detail. Joining us this morning for today's detailed newspaper analysis, we have Funmi Odunde. Good morning, Funmi.
Good morning.
Always a pleasure to have you with us. We've also got Fred Allison in the studio. Good morning, Fred.
Good morning.
Brilliant stuff. Find them both on Twitter, respectively, as at Funmi Odunde and at Mr. FB Allison. Valentine and myself will be taking you through these stories, but do remember to join us in the conversation. We always appreciate your comments, we appreciate your feedback, and we appreciate your insight because we have some of the most intelligent listeners, I think, in Lagos. Yeah. So use the hash FreshlyPressed981 when you're sending us messages via Twitter, but you can send in lengthier message via WhatsApp. The WhatsApp number to message is 0809 444 0981.
We'll start with a story from Guardian newspaper, Fred. The headline reads, 60 million illiterates exist in Nigeria, and that's according to the Education Minister, Malam Adamu. He made this revelation yesterday in Kano, where he said Nigeria has about 60 million illiterate youth and adults. He said the females accounted for nearly 60% of this population. What are your thoughts on this?
This is obviously very alarming because you're talking about almost 34% of our population that are illiterate, and we're in a world where the world is more advanced. You know, we're using technology more. Technology counts for more of our employment options, and for us to be competitive globally, if we're in a situation where this continues to grow, because one of the other things that's stated in the article is that although people are getting formal education, they're lower standard. So it's a complicated case where we have illiterates and then we have people that are going through the process, but they're not coming out as
literate as required, as necessary. Yes.
So the article states that this is a thing that is pressing and has to be addressed, right? The only thing I find funny is that we always get this kind of reports in one of those like it was like illiteracy day or like a speaking.
Because he made the statement at the 2018 International Literacy Day celebration, and I get your point. I mean, this sounds like rhetoric, constant rhetorics, but really steps. What are the active steps, practical steps being taken to make sure that this is the training is ingrained? There's a set rule. There's something that they're going to implement. There's a process that's going on.
Yeah,
physically.
So exactly. So there's another thing that's stated in the article that they're working on coming up with a campaign to I guess, I don't know if it's make us aware that this is happening in the country, but that still doesn't solve.
Is the orientation the issue? We have been there's so much talk going on. I mean, that's been made towards or addressed to address education, but really, what are the steps? What are there practical things? Practical, would I say, facilities that have been put in place, trainings that have been organized, dates placed on these things, practical steps. I think Nigerians at this point are tired of, now, recently we're not done talking about the low budgets that have been given to education year on year.
Yeah.
And we hear this rhetoric. What difference does this make?
And again, there's a group that could be tapped into, like if this was like in I think in America does this, where you get tax benefits, if you give. So this could be a good area where you can make people, where there was this thing going on where you had to voluntarily state what you own, right? Or otherwise
voluntary assets
declaration.
declaration.
So you could use this as an opportunity where people can, if you give towards it to a certain quota,
you have some
exactly, so there are ways, because obviously this is hard, this heavy burden on the government that already has like cash constraints, but you can also open it out where the citizens can also participate, because it affects us anyway.
It does, of course, on a large scale. Let's move on to this next story. I'll jump to the story with you, Funmi. Premium Times newspaper. I'll have this report reads, Senate moves to allow colleges of education award first degree, still in line with the education talk. But there's a bill that's passed the second reading yesterday to repeal Federal Colleges of Education Act of 1986 and to reenact the Federal Colleges of Education Act in 2018 that really addresses the issue of awards of certificates. They said the usual certificate we know that Colleges of Education currently award is the National Nigerian Certificate of Education, NCE, that has been existent since 1986. But they're saying, in line with this new changes that they are suggesting, that the issuance of the new degree would only be on the approval of regulatory agencies governing the institutions, and also to increase the tenure of the provosts of colleges from 4 to 5 years. What are your thoughts, Funmi?
Okay, so coming off of Fred's first topic,
Yes.
One of the problems that we have is lack of different opportunities for education. So we are very stereotyped in Nigeria. Primary school, secondary school, most people look forward to universities, and as such, we tend not to place any importance on colleges of education and polytechnics. We tend to see them as much lesser degrees.
Yes.
But colleges of education are actually very important, especially for a country like Nigeria, where they're very stringent process. It's a very stringent process to get into the university with JAM and all of that. Colleges of education are smaller institutions that are easier to get into. They offer shorter courses, and they are usually just more practical. Than universities are especially more academic than the colleges of education. So yes, it's actually, if we're looking into the education sector to do something about it, it's a good thing that we're looking at them. It's not just about giving them the power to award first degrees. They are also trying to increase their packages to that of members of the National Universities Commission, and that is good, because after all the rhetoric, after all the talk, everything will still boil down to how much are we ready to pump into the sector.
Yes.
If I'm almost sure that part of the 60 million illiterates that we have will include some teachers.
Right. Some or a lot.
So, what are we doing? Every notable person is running away from academia. Was at the time that I was growing up, academia was an option, was a field
that you
consider you could plan towards it, towards entering the academia. But right now, it's not attractive in any form. This is a good step on the part of the Senate. The only problem with it is we know ASU just caught off their strike based on promises. So just getting them at par with the universities is not, on paper again, is encouraging, but it does not bring that much optimism, knowing the problems we've been having with the universities as of late.
Thank you very much, Funmi. And it's interesting that you mentioned that, because it's really what should be considered, especially looking to the effectiveness of education and the different levels of education, looking at College of Education for one as an instance. We'll go to this next story from the Premium Times newspaper. IGP Idris wants police inspector generals appointed without Senate confirmation. We recall not too long ago when he was summoned to the House by the Senate to answer questions, and he disregarded that multiple times, and then now the Inspector General of Police, Nigeria's Inspector General of Police, Ibrahim Idris, has advised that the Senate confirmation should be expunged from the process of appointing an Inspector General of Police. He made this address at a public hearing on the bill for an act to repeal the Police Act that's proposed. The part of Senate confirmation should be removed from the bill under consideration. Fred, what are your thoughts on this?
So the bill recommends that the applicant be, like 3 applicants be nominated by the Nigerian Police Council, which is sent to the presidency, and then the presidency picks from these 3 applicants, subject to the Senate approval, right? And then what's currently going on is that the president picks who he wants. I think that process seems more rounded, because he has every party that would naturally be involved in picking the right candidate involved in it. The police council are identifying who's fit, exactly, and then the Senate represents the people, so the people are involved. So this particular IG has had like standing. The article says has had standing with the Senate, which he has refused to honor their invitation for him to show up. So
What would you say? What would you say would be the premise, behind this intention or this request by or suggestion by the IGP? I mean, do you think it's based off of that tiff with the Senate, or other reasons that you might think might be concrete or not?
It probably is from there, but regardless, like our constitution and our processes are supposed to supersede and outlive any individual.
Okay.
So if we want to add something.
Okay, so this comment is not to place any form of standard or approval on the IGP and his processes, but there's this thing about, especially if you're professional in a particular field, there's this thing about feeling that reporting to people, subjecting your processes to people who are not particularly technically fit in that field is a burden or is a nuisance. But in a democracy, it's a necessary nuisance.
Yes.
And we might not we might have all manner of feelings about the members that are in our National Assembly and all of that. But this kind of fields are actually necessary, because unchecked power, even for the best man, for the man with the best intentions, can be a dangerous thing.
Yes.
So it could be out of, I mean, what do you guys know about security? There's so many things I can't explain to you. Why all this?
Which is why I cannot come when you invite me, because
exactly.
I don't have to answer to you, because you know.
But it is necessary. It is a necessary nuisance.
Yeah, because they represent the people.
Yeah.
So
All right.
just for that.
Okay, so let's go to this next story, which is rather interesting. Yeah, some people have been waiting for this. So, New Telegraph has this story. Representatives reject bill to stop public officers from sending children to foreign schools. It's from New Telegraph newspaper. So, a bill aimed at stopping public officers from sending their children or wards to schools overseas suffered a setback on the floor of the House of Representatives yesterday. Now, when the lawmakers kicked against this bill, they argued that the proposed legislation infringes on the constitutional and fundamental rights of Nigerians. They said Nigerians should be allowed to make their own choice, that it's discriminatory and impinges on the constitutional rights of the average Nigerian. We see that they spend a lot of money. I mean, people, when I say they, it's not like a select few. A lot of lawmakers, and they are all involved in this, sending the children abroad to schools, and then the educational sector is suffering because those who proposed this bill sought to have this as a means to improving the educational standards in Nigeria, for government to pay more attention to improving facilities and general funding for education system. But I mean, they are kicking against this. So Fred and everyone in the studio, what are your thoughts on this?
First of all, let's just clap for Honorable Ohu for even bringing it up. Let's clap for it. This is brilliant. If you look at if we look at concessions across the Senate, probably 90% of them schooled in Nigeria, and they went to fantastic schools here. So what are you saying, in other words, right? That either you're representing the people, and education is one of the things that's going to move us forward, but you don't think that we should put some kind of standards where you have to go through the process that everybody else should be able to go to. An average Nigerian would not be able to send his child abroad, right? Obviously, it just speaks to the current situation we have with the House of Representatives and the Senate, where they care about themselves and their interests, right? This is something where they found all creative ways to say this is discriminatory against them,
fundamental rights,
and their freedom to pick or to choose, But I think it's a fantastic bill, and it just puts the focus on where it bites you, you take interest in it, right? So if it's biting our lawmakers, the school systems would work.
Thank you.
That's I don't know. I think Funmi was just. I don't know.
Because I'm just curious, because this has come up and we're seeing it being shut down, but I can't help but think of this vis-a-vis talking about reducing the salaries of our lawmakers, all these things and benefits that they seem to have, it's accrued to them.
One thing though is public officers will not be limited to the lawmakers.
Absolutely.
So
I agree with you.
It will not be limited to
it
them.
Would be, it would be the entire public system. It would be all civil servants.
It would be all civil servants, and So even if, well, they would
It would
never
be the
have
president.
agreed,
It would be the vice president.
they would never agree. But I also see a lot of people in the public and civil service looking at you and saying, "Is it my fault? Is it my child's fault?"
Because they said they're looking for qualitative education
but-
in other climes. Why
Yeah.
not here?
Exactly. Here's the thing. It's not about fault. We just want to know, are you doing everything possible to ensure that our education system is the best it can be? And the sad reality seems to be, from all indication, no. And the truth is, because everyone prioritizes their children above everything in their lives, if you had no other option but for your children to remain in the land of their birth, you would do everything possible to ensure that your education system worked.
Or those foreign investors will just come and open.
See,
I'll
so-
join,
so-
but it will still be here.
yeah, but
Yeah.
someone said something, and this is not an endorsement in
Okay,
any way,
alright.
that Atiku's children, like Atiku put a school in his hometown, and his kids went to that school. I don't know how true this
It's
is.
an American university.
Yeah, but
Yes.
that's kind of the thing that we're pushing for. You know, can you like bring? So if you feel the education is fantastic somewhere else, then bring it
Bring the
here, or
campuses here.
or bring exchange tutors that come.
Yes.
You know,
Anyway, thank you so very much.
All right, thank you. We've got quite a few messages that have been coming through, so let's go over to Emma from Akoka talking about education. He says it's bad enough that 3 in 5 of every Nigerian is illiterate, and 60% of that subset tend to be female. My fears are that those numbers will be higher when defined by tech literacy. So now that we know the problem, can we in the same breath proffer actual solutions? Very interesting. While Tosin from Ikoyi says, brilliant idea, the children of the public persons should school in Nigeria. A typical banker isn't allowed to bank elsewhere. Your payroll is here. Why enrich elsewhere? Very interesting. Dawizi says stopping children in a political class from schooling abroad actually feels discriminatory. You're stopping children that have no hand in putting their parents in position from achieving their dreams. What I do think is workable is stopping government officials from seeking health solutions abroad. So why health and not education? Very. Anyways, let's move on. The Guardian newspaper is talking next. For me, why Jimi Abgaje's billboard posters were removed. That's from LASAA. According to the Lagos State Signage and Advertisement Agency, LASAA, they've said that the removal of the billboards was simply because, well, first, Mobolaji Sanusi, the general manager of LASAA, says the candidate did not seek permission of the agency. I put an LOL beside that because right after that statement, it then went on to say that Sanusi said, unlike his counterpart of the APC, the PDP candidate did not get authorization before mounting the billboards. Seeking permission, getting authorization, different things. And then saying that the rules and regulations must be strictly adhered to. Funmi, your thoughts on the story?
Okay, so this is going to be very short. It's left for the PDP to come and say, we did try, we thought, we
Yes.
did all of that, and all of that. But one question I do have for LASAA is, so does that mean that you authorize the counterpart to place his billboards before the time permitted by the law?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because
That
we
is
saw
a
all those
very-
billboards.
That is a
Thank
very,
you.
very important question. And then, do we now, it now looks to a system where, because it's supposed to be outdoor advertising, newer forms of infrastructure, newer areas that have been hitherto before now not being part of the whole outdoor advertising space has now been created for this political climb. That is my very important question.
I like the first one you asked, and I would really love for you to repeat it because I'm sure a lot of people missed it.
Okay, so my question was, the counterpart that did seek authorization, did you authorize him to put up those adverts before the time permitted by the law?
All right. Questions. We will wait for answers. Now let's move on. We've got this next story to get to. The federal government are moving to ban trucks on the Lagos-Ibadan highway from the new Telegraph. Now, if you were listening on your eyebrows just reach your hairline, I understand why. Well, they're saying, according to the Minister of Transport, Rotimi Amechi, the idea is to preserve the Lagos-Ibadan road when the rail reconstruction is completed. He's saying that effective from June of 2019, that the federal government would have completed work on the rail project linking the western and northern axis to begin the transportation of cargo. For me, we'd heard time and time again from our Minister of Transportation that this December was the time. I was ready to travel to Ibadan this December.
And
However,
some political things have been happening.
machinations, okay. And but is it really feasible to say that you want to ban the trucks from
Okay, maybe ban
that?
was such a strong word, but it is something that we can eventually get. It is a fabulous idea if we eventually get there. It is actually a good plan. The only fear that I have right now is this shifting of our date, because even the date of June 2019 that he put forward, he clearly stated that we won't be able to accommodate all by that date. So this plan will come into effect when we're sure that we can accommodate all cargo. So the timeline we don't know, but just imagine that a lot of those trucks being on the road are unnecessary, and they are the cost for, apart from the cost of road maintenance, the cost of lives they cost is actually a lot more important. So, and it will be a lot beneficial even for the cargo transporters, because it's cheaper, it's less hazardous, and it's good for our roads. So it's a fantastic idea. It's a fantastic plan if we can actually just get there.
Can I add to that?
Please add to it.
So one of the things is that we also need to improve our other areas, our other ports locations, so we can decongest the trucks that are coming out of Lagos. But the thing is, if I was a business owner and I've invested in my trucks, then what do I do next? This banning is not, so you have to slowly, make a case where, as you said, it becomes cheaper that I can go through by rail, but I still have to do something with my trucks.
Maybe we can turn them into food trucks.
Exactly. Thank you. Because
and we can repurpose it. We've got very artistic people in Nigeria.
A lot of your trucks take days and weeks to reach its destination because of that way they break down.
And they're all lined up on bridges. So maybe we'll finally get rid of the trucks on the bridges.
Yes,
maybe that will help.
We need other ports locations.
Amen.
Yes,
to get them out of
right
Lagos.
about
Yes.
that. You are right.
Oh my goodness. All right. Well, let's keep it moving. Still more stories to cover this morning. From Thisday newspaper, the recovered 3 billion naira. I have no case to answer, says ex-NNPC boss Yakubu. So the former group managing director of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation, Andrew Yakubu, has said that he's got no case to answer in his trial before the Federal High Court in Abuja. He's being tried on a 6-count charge brought against him by the EFCC, in which he's charged with failure to declare assets and money laundering. Remember that on the 3rd of February 2017, they'd actually raided his house located in Kaduna South local government area of Kaduna State, where they claim to have recovered about 9.7 million US dollars and about 74,000 pounds sterling, a recovery which informed the charge. And it is the ex-NNPC's contention in the no case submission he filed on the 6th of this year, 6th of November this year, that I've got no case to answer. What are your thoughts on this? Oh, sorry, I've tried going to.
Yeah, actually, Funmi would be best to share this, But I guess from what he's saying is like the case that's put in front of him. They're talking about, okay, so they found this money there, and there's evidence that they found the money. So it was all predicated on, yeah, we found this money is intact. We documented when we were counting it. We put it on hard drives, and these hard drives are 32 gigabytes. All this information is important that we know that, as opposed to, how did you get this money?
Yes.
So if we're asking, how did you get this money, then he has a case to answer. If you're talking about, you counted the money was 9 million, I have no case to answer that. Let's just get rid of this so I can move on with my life and maybe go and enjoy the other bits that haven't been found. I don't know. But the case, yeah, exactly. That's what we want to know, is like, how did you get $9 million
in your house?
In your house.
Not the one in the bank account.
Yes.
We didn't find any in Osogwe this time, did we? No. Okay. Very interesting. Very interesting. Final story in from the Punch newspaper this time. CPS, the federal government makes a national identification number mandatory for workers. So the federal government has mandated that all workers under the contributory pension scheme are to produce their national identification numbers as part of their pension requirements. The National Pension Commission disclosed this in a circular titled Notice on the Mandatory Use of the National Identification Number for All Existing RSA Holders.
Okay, so when you're trying to get Nigerians to do something and they refuse to do it, just go in the area of their money.
Don't touch your money.
Yes.
Just
That is very true.
That is practically what
Very
they're doing. Because I think there were even some banks that were sent out notices that if you've not, some of our branches are open.
Yes.
And, when you're cajoling.
Remember the time of the BVN?
Exactly.
Yes, that happened.
Yeah, exactly. That happened until
if you
you could not touch your money.
Yes.
So when they're putting this kind of condition on your pension. You
Absolutely,
will,
but for me, I can't help but think that a number of people have the same question when we come back to it. Is we've got all of these different forms of identification. Why does the owner still remain on the individual to go and find somewhere else to do another registration? Why do they not just consolidate and say, okay, we just need to verify that you're still alive and you still exist, and then here's the number that we've assigned to you? Because they've got the BVN, they've got passport information, they've got voters registers information, they've got telco information.
Yes, and it looks like a lot, but I think that which is what the national identity number is supposed to do. It's supposed to be the one by the federal, the unifying one,
And social security number.
Similar,
So to speak,
that
yes.
I don't know if there are any social benefits attached to this.
You're collecting our pension. Collecting our pension.
But we didn't need to now gather those information together and create a database collaboration of some sort to be able to do this. And I'm hoping it gets to the point where the national identity number becomes the one number that runs as a thread through it all, such that with the national identity number you can get whatever information that you want to about the person. So yes, and I think it's also a very creative way of pushing the need for a census for what to have the money to do with that. So
yes,
because we don't have the money for it. So
that conversation happened earlier this year.
Yes, it's a creative way of doing that.
Okay, we've got just enough time now, which is fantastic, to discuss some of the comments that have been coming in. Sam from Ikoyi says, education in its traditional form is dead and will never again succeed in this century. He says the volume of applicants will always outstrip the available teachers and classrooms, so we must have an online education policy and direction. This will be the easiest path to world-class education available to all who can get access online. We just need the forces to force obviously getting many people to be able to read by the time they're adolescents. Okay, very interesting. I think I see what you're saying there. All right, still more messages.
Hendrik sent in this one. Hendrik says the Nigerian education system is still in the stone age. You can't be using diagrams to explain science lab experiments in 2018. At least YouTube exists. I believe that we should encourage companies to invest in education with some form of incentives, like a HP funded computer lab in Unilag, or one of the pharmaceutical research labs sponsored by one of the pharmaceutical companies. It will make education cool and more practical.
Okay, that's definitely one way to look at it. Oluzil is typing on us in bold, so that's very serious about literacy. Nearly 8,000 billionaires in Nigeria with a net worth of 1 to about 5 billion according to FIRS stats. These can get tax waivers for sharing a little bit of their wealth to improve education and future national productivity, as we all need it. Every child in school will benefit and have a fighting chance in life and fuel their hustle. Today is about education, so let's make it happen. Great contributions. Thank you for that contribution.
Boma says, please, I want to ask this bill that the IGP is pushing. Who is going to look and approve this bill? Is this the same Senate he refused to answer their call? Why is the current police IGP thinking that he's above the constitution of the country?
He did answer their call now. Because,
but he answered it once before also, remember. It's just the frequency that he was like, listen, I'm busy.
So the Police Act is going through a repeal bill, the Senate is going through a police repeal bill, and this was a public hearing where the stakeholders were supposed to come and give their thoughts on it. So he came and those are his thoughts.
He was there.
Right. Any Chuku offers a different perspective on the bill about education, saying that I actually agree with the lawmakers. The bill is discriminatory. Every Nigerian should be stopped from studying abroad. Another way to look at it. Another way to look at it. If we all had to be here, maybe we'd all be focused together.
Rotimi says the government should embark on practical and functional measures to combat illiteracy. Education should be accessible and affordable by the citizenry. Government should also consider the establishment of more adult education centers in rural and urban areas of every state to help address the problem of adult illiteracy. It is also important to create comfortable learning environments in our schools, provide quality equipment and functional facilities. The teachers and non-academic staff in universities, in schools actually, should not be neglected. The education sector should be well funded.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that. And I'll round up with a quick couple up on Twitter. Okonkwo Samuel says, many of the foreigners heading departments and companies in Nigeria have diplomas. In Nigeria, OND and HND are seen as lower than BSc. Colleges of education don't have to be degree awarding institutions. We just need to have a better view of what those certificates mean. And Wise Man 11 says, kudos to Senator Funmi Odunde as Speaker of the House, FreshlyPressed and Val. see, as you all just solved Nigeria's transport problems, you should run for office. I wish these guys really listened to Freshly Pressed.
We wish so.
Thank you very much for that. On that note.